colorful drag shows, a cruising labyrinth in the forest, and a dark room on the festival side. With its secret garden of porn stage, Melt Festival offered a slightly different festival experience this year. The stage was curated by Berlin collective Pornceptual, which is best known for its sex-positive parties at Alte Münze, an industrial coin factory building and event location in Berlin. But what is a sex-positive party? How do you create a so-called safe space on an open-air festival site? And why do we need to redefine the term porn? We met up with Pornceptual's founders Chris Phillip and Raquel Fedato at the Secret Garden of Porn stage to find out all about their collective.
The idea was to do something that is like changing the concept around pornography, just to show that pornography can be done in a more like aesthetic and more conceptual way. Or the idea is just like to go against like mainstream pornography and present alternative. I started like in Brazil a few years ago. It started more like a platform for like online erotic art, but then like moved to Berlin and I started to do this with Raquel, and then it developed into like a party. We also have a printed magazine, and we are doing lots of different things for the project.
The idea behind Pornceptual is definitely to challenge what pornography is, and that's why we use this term, and it's something that already brought us a lot of problems because pornography has such a bad connotation, but it's important to reclaim this term and just give it a new meaning.
Can do something that is not from the sex industry, that is something like that is done with like a different ethic and like a different approach, and it's more respectful towards people. The idea of like a sex positive space is something that like sex can happen, but it's not only about sex. Like it has like a kinky atmosphere, and of course like there are areas for sex, but it's more about like having the possibility instead of like having very fixed rules that sex has to happen.
I think it's also a really good alternative to standard sex parties. Pornceptual especially, it's not only a sex party or a clubbing night. We consider it happening because we have a lot of different things, from music to our performances to exhibitions. So it goes beyond what a sex party or what a clubbing night actually is. We run our event in Berlin at the same location now since 2015, I think. We are at Alte Münze, which is a former coin factory in Berlin. And it's actually a great location for us because it's not a standard club, so we have a lot of freedom creating there and just like changing the venue for every event we do there, so it doesn't get boring.
We host the parties in venues that are not fetish venues, so we really have to build the whole the whole architecture for people to have sex, and I think it's an experiment, but it works. It's good to have this freedom.
We actually got approached by one of the people from your booking team because they wanted to bring like a queer element into the festival. They had Pansy for the last 5 years, but they wanted more queer projects and something that's more related to sex. And I think it's a great fit. It's definitely a challenge to have Pornceptual at festivals because a lot of the crowd does not know what we do, but it's really good for us, and it's a constant exercise to teach people what we do and to make them aware of the importance of what we do. So it's definitely been a really good experience to be here. Being here, it's definitely a challenge for us because it's an open air space. So creating a sex atmosphere in the middle of a forest is definitely an interesting experience.
One of the important things of the project is actually to make people more open about sex. So the idea of like living our own space and doing something that is more like an intervention, like is very interesting for us. Of course, as Raquel said, like we still have to explain, like especially in the labyrinth, like we have a person who's hosting the labyrinth. So this person briefs everyone before he enters the space, and for us it's really important. So it's a challenge, but I think it has worked very well here. every night we start with some performers, so we have a program of 2 hours with different performers from Berlin. And then after this, we introduce like a few DJs. But then is when we also open the Labyrinth that should work as a cruising area. So we're doing like 3 different things.
The performer hosting all nights is Olympia Bukakis. She's a non-binary performer from Berlin who hosts a night called Queens Against Borders. And she's actually the perfect fit for Melt because she's very playful with the audience.
Come a little closer, all these people over there, come closer. Come and join me in this, situation.
We have 5 stage performers, Bo and Grace, Leon, Sawyer the Cow, Kyle, Nikki Miller. And every night we also had 2 of our resident DJs from Pornceptual playing here afterwards.
Do I look okay?
The crowd, like we have had mixed reactions to the crowd. I think some people like just curious and it just come, which is fine. But we still want to push people to participate like a little bit more.
But I also think it's good for us to be here and make people aware of our existence and explain to them that if they want to be more open about their sexuality in a space like this, they also have the option to do that. Yeah, I think like the crowd of our parties in Berlin is definitely very mixed. We have like Pornceptual is a queer project, but we're open to people from like with different sexual options. So it's definitely a challenge, as Chris said, being here because the queer community is definitely more open towards sexuality than a majoritarily straight crowd. But people show themselves really open to what we're offering here. We actually did have a lot of people having sex in the dark room, so yeah, it worked.
Maybe like dark room and this idea of cruising is more present in the gay culture, but in the straight culture not so much. So it was interesting to see like some straight people actually using the Labyrinth.
At our parties in Berlin, we have both techno, house, and more experimental music. But I think our signature is definitely techno. So the acts we brought were our resident DJs, Projekt Gestalten and Jamaica Souk. And then we also had 2 guest DJs, Trax and Deep Neue, who's from a queer collective from Berlin as well called Trashera. It's definitely challenging, but we always work for Pornceptual as well with an awareness team, and we brought them here. So we have 3 awareness members walking around, making sure that people are respecting our rules and explaining to people our concept. And our awareness concept also extended itself to the Panama area. So we put together a team for that area who's also working for us in our events in Berlin. And yeah, trying to help the festival to become a safer space for queer people, for women.
And they're also like walking around and just making sure that people following the rules, that like everything is consensual and everyone is feeling safe. So they're doing so we don't need security staff there.
Our awareness team is also here to facilitate the experience of a guest if they want to come and experience what we're doing here. Like they're there to explain, they're there to help without you necessarily having to reach out to a staff member. We always put our own staff together. We also do a festival actually here at Philopolis, so it's also the same staff that works for us at our festival. And yeah, first it's just important to have this community feeling and to work with people who are very aware of what we do and who also have common values and ethics in general. For the last years, we visited a lot of countries with Pornceptual. I mean, it's really important for us to bring our concept to cities who actually need it, because Berlin is already a queer, sex-positive city. And so we had the party in the States, we had the party in Brazil, where both of us are from, and also a lot of cities around Europe. And next we're going to Paris and London and Moscow, Amsterdam, and Tel Aviv. Well, the parties we bring to other cities, it's always a challenge for us to shape them the way we want, and it's difficult to achieve the same thing we achieve in Berlin, but it's definitely important and it needs to happen. And I think it's something that's progressive and something that if we do it more than once, we can definitely see a change of the crowd and of how things work.
There's definitely no place like Berlin. I think the freedom we have in Berlin is very special. It's still interesting to go in other cities. We always collaborate with like local parties or like of other queer collectives as well. So it's also nice to have this dialogue and also learn from them.
Pornception has a very strong political concept behind it. So for us, it's really important to go and visit countries that actually really need our presence, like Brazil, or we've also had parties in Turkey and countries that are more conservative. It's a gray zone. In Brazil, it's somewhat illegal being naked in public spaces. We also had the party in New York, which is also a very big challenge. And yeah, I mean, we are doing it. We never had like legal problems so far, and we hope to keep doing it. So for me, my most special memory is when we did Boiler Room. We had we did a partnership with Boiler Room last year to celebrate our 5th anniversary, and it was definitely a very special event because it was an event for our friends and our supporters, and it was really beautiful to just see. It was a day that it was actually 39 degrees in Berlin, and it was at a very tiny and hot club, but everyone showed up in fetish gear, and we had amazing artists, and it was just one of those moments that you look at what you've accomplished and you're like, oh, okay, that's why I do what I do. So yeah, for me, that's one of my special moments.